Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Constitutionally Speaking. This morning we're looking at the topic third world countries, and you might ask why. Well, listen to the background information that we're sharing. With a recent shooting, one fatal, of two National Guard members in Washington, D.C. recently by a man who turned out to be an Afghan national, the U.S. president has announced an immediate pause on migration from third world countries. Whatsoever definition of third world is adopted by the Trump administration, it appears as if Jamaica might be included in the clampdown. In this segment, then, we will examine the concept of third world countries and its relevance as a terminology in international politics today. Joining me in this segment, sponsored by the Office of the Public Defender, is the Deputy Public Defender himself, Mr. Herbert McKenzie. Good morning, Mr. Mack, and how are you today?
Good morning, sir. I'm fine, and I trust you are well, too.
I'm doing well. The flu, the sniffles are gone, and I'm a happy man.
In all honesty. Much better.
Yes.
Sounding much better.
Thank you.
Yes, the big man up north, as they call him, has decided that third world countries are going to be subject to the greater scrutiny, in fact, a ban. The irony about it is this Afghan man who they held for the shooting that you described in your lead-up. He was granted asylum by the very Trump administration. His application started under the previous administration, but by the time this thing came to an end and he was finally granted, it was under the current administration that was done. And as a result of that, ban has been placed on migration from third world countries. In addition to that, there has been a directive issued by the White House to Homeland Security to start a review or to continue or to intensify a review of all green card holders in the United States. And you know, quite a number of our countrymen and women folk in the United States are green card holders. You know, heading towards citizenships. Now, let's look at this concept of third world, as the title suggests. It came about sometime after World War II. World War II ended in 1945. And at the end of that war, they developed in the world what I would call a major split along ideological line. That ideological line saw two global superpowers in a massive standoff. And that standoff lasted for several years, decades in fact. And the period for which that standoff lasted, they refer to it as the period of the Cold War. Now, on one side of the divide was the then Soviet Union, and on the other side was the Western world led by the USA. Soviet Union eventually broke up and turned to Russia and the satellite states. Now, at the time, the Soviet Union embraced communist Marxist ideology, while the West embraced the capitalist ideology as we know it today, practiced in America and other Western countries. So the world was essentially a bipolar world, two poles, the East and the West. The East, quote-unquote, communist, and the West, the capitalist state. Now, with that, many other countries in the world aligned themselves to one of these two poles. People with the communist Marxist ideology aligned themselves to the Soviet bloc, while people of the capitalist ideology aligned themselves to the Western American-led type thing. And right here in the Caribbean, we saw it. Cuba, for example, was regarded as a communist because Cuba's loyalty was to the Soviet bloc, the Eastern bloc. And even right here at home, we can say the Jamaican ideology was pro-West, pro-American, capitalist ideology. And we stayed here. There was a time for those who are old enough in the 70s, under the Manley regime, when the origins of democratic socialism was fashionable, and was seen that time as being closer in alignment to the Eastern Bloc thinking than it was to the Western capitalist type thinking. But that's for another time. So, those countries which aligned themselves to the American-led Western capitalist ideology were the ones referred to as first world countries, while those who aligned the Soviet Union were referred to as second world countries. And they practiced their ideology that underlined their alignment at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there were some countries, however, who did not subscribe to any of these ideologies. Or at least they didn't do so openly, or it was officially expressed as part of their national policy. These countries were what are called third world countries. Jamaica and a lot of our Caribbean territories, African states, and some Asian countries fell into this category of third world countries. And that's where the term was born. That's when the term was born. It was coined by a French historian and anthropologist by the name of Sauvé. It was coined in 1922. He wrote extensively on demographics, anthropology, and historical matters. And the term became acceptable as a description for poor, the less developed, and the non-industrialized countries. Incidentally or otherwise, most of these countries that were regarded as third world countries were largely populated with black and colored, and generally with low levels of income.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for those who remember their politics, the Soviet Union dissolved sometime in the 80s. And with the dissolution of the Soviet Union, there was no longer two main powers, left and right. Logically, what happened is that second world countries, as it were, disappeared, no longer existed, because the Soviet bloc was no longer there. So with the disappearance of second world countries, naturally the third world country is going to disappear, because there's no second, there's going to be no third.
Yes.
So with the disappearance of the third world countries concept, there came to be used terms like low and middle income countries, or you have terms like least developed countries, or terms like developing countries.
Mm-hmm.
And those became the terms that were used to describe those countries which were formerly referred to as third world.
Well, Mr. Mark, when they go out labeling a country as a third world country, does it have any legal or trade or even policy implications under international law?
Not legal, but there are socio-economic implications, because by being categorized as a third world countries, you fall in a certain economic bracket,
yeah,
and you are regarded as a country to be assisted if needs be, or you don't have that powerful say in world affairs unless you move together as a region, which most countries, well, several countries did, and we here in the Caribbean, where we have CARICOM, and you tend to speak with one voice, because these little small developing states really don't have a say in world affairs. But interesting question you ask, because the term has become so outdated nowadays that it is regarded as offensive or derogatory, and it's not generally used again. The politically correct term now is what they call the global south. And, you know, since a lot of these countries, which were regarded as third world countries, are generally in the southern hemisphere, a lot of the African states, a lot of the Latin American states, and some of the Asian states, because they're in the southern hemisphere, the concept of global south
mm-hmm.
has garnered some form of legitimacy by simply dint of geography. Now, the global south is a popular term.
Yes.
And when you hear people talking about the Caribbean as small developing states, SIDs, you'll hear the general term they use, countries of the global south. It's really the newly inherited term that has been used to replace the disparaging third world country. Now, that aside, organizations today like the World Trade Organization, WTO, and other international bodies use that term to describe the countries. And it is based upon a classification which is predicated upon the development and other, socioeconomic metrics like GDP, income levels, education, employment, cost of living, all of those things. And when you look at those metrics, you'll find that the countries which are now regarded as countries of the global south, all of them tend to fall in a bracket in which these features, these metrics, have a share of commonality. Now, under the United Nations, their development index use terms like developing countries, least developed countries, and low-income countries. And you notice these terms are not much different from the terms used by the WTO, because all of these bodies that are actually very wealthy and headquartered and are created in the what was formerly called first world countries, the global north, are the same countries which they look upon as third world countries. And these organizations are the organizations that will approve or will dictate any financial assistance that will come to the global south. So it's hardly surprising that the terminology and the classifications they use are basically one and the same. But, the term third world countries, know that it has been regarded as disparaging and offensive. It has always been that from the very beginning, because historically, when you look at countries which were not aligned to any of the major poles, you will see that some of those countries, by third world definition, would have been third world countries, but by any other economic standards, they could not be third world countries. So, for example,
Sweden?
Ireland,
yes,
Finland, and Switzerland. These countries were not aligned to the Soviet Union, Neither were they aligned to the American-led Western countries. But yet they were regarded, by the definition of third world that came during the Cold War, as third world countries. So you see the discrepancy between what third world countries conceptually mean and what actually happens on the ground. So third world concept has always been something derogatory from the very beginning. It is just that people start accepting it now when you have developed Southeast Asian countries like China and those countries down that side who are now becoming industrial giants. They can't really regard those countries by any measure, economic, socio-political, as third world countries. So the term itself just fell into disuse, naturally so, and quite correctly so. Now, by any consideration, whether the third world old outdated terminology or the newly acceptable global south terminology, Jamaica seems to be caught up in that category, which is third world or global south. Now, if Trump's threat, I call it that for want of a better word, goes through, then Jamaica will be swept up in those countries from which immigration will be banned or paused. Right now, there are several countries which are regarded as the global south, which are now under full ban from migration to the United States. Countries like the same Afghanistan from which the shooter came, Dominican Republic, Haiti here in the Caribbean, countries like Libya in North Africa, Somalia, Chad, Yemen, Iran, Myanmar, Sudan. And the thing about all those countries which have full ban now, if you look at them religiously, they are predominantly Muslim countries. And you'll recall in a previous administration, there was a ban on Muslim countries or Muslim people coming to the United States. I think the American media called it Islamophobia. So it's not surprising that they know a full ban. And those without full ban will have migration restriction placed upon them. But the word to our friend in the United States diaspora is be careful. Don't burn your bridges behind you, and don't have a posture that me now go back to Jamaica, things too hard, me down to Jamaica, because you may very well find yourself back here involuntarily.
Yes.
That's it for now.
I like the way you stress the word involuntarily.
Yes.
And I learned a new word, Islamophobia. Yes. Before you go, I'm not even asking for a comment, but I'm just telling you that I was doing a lot of reading this morning on the whole matter of the White House and the Pentagon's reaction to this military strike on an alleged Venezuelan drug boat and the way that they're defending the actions that were taken. It's quite an interesting topic and an interesting discussion. But I want to thank you for your time this morning, Mr. Mack, and we'll definitely catch up with you again soon.
Indeed, my brother. All the best to you and your listeners.
All right. Much